Welcome back, everyone. We are on to our last portion of the space unit today. And so, what we're talking about are what are some of the issues associated with space exploration? And we can put most of them into four main categories, the issues that we're having. But there's so much potential out there, like it's literally limitless. Like, because the universe does not have a physical limit on it, there is physically endless possibilities that we could find, but there are things holding us back. Those are these issues that we got to talk about. That's what today is for. First one is political. So if you've followed the news at all, there's potential unrest in the Middle East over Kim Jong-un, because there's no confirmed reports or anything, but it sounds like he may not be the supreme ruler of North Korea for very much longer. The reason why this has caused so much unrest is because the geopolitical climate is very dependent on a few key countries over there. And they're worried that if Kim Jong-un is no longer the supreme ruler of North Korea, that maybe China moves in, or maybe allies start to not want to be associated anymore. There's this whole great big thing about, okay, what would happen if this one country had a change in who was running it, which sounds like super insignificant. It's just one person. How does that affect like us here in Canada, or like the United States, their relationship with China? Like, neither of those two countries are the one we're talking about. But those things are all linked together. When we ask this question of who owns space, space is much more, like, there's so much potential for good, but there's also potential for bad if countries can't get along. And that has tended to be the pattern in the past. Thinking about like military advantages or resource extraction or like all sorts of those things, the question of ownership is actually a really important one that hasn't really been agreed on. Like we said, okay, nobody can lay claim on it, but who's going to stop them? Like, there's no space police. So if somebody goes up there and is like, just kidding, we've decided that now this is ours, we don't have a great way to prevent that. We don't have a great workaround. And because it could be such a potentially devastating thing, especially in comparison to what qualifies as like a really big deal right now, this is a really big issue. So the politics, like there was an entire arms race back when the US and Russia were both trying to go to the moon first. So the politics behind all of this can be quite overwhelming. I don't want to go too into depth on it right now, but just know that there are significant political issues. Next thing to talk about is the ethical side of things. And this kind of ties into the politics a little bit. Like, should we really be spending all of this money on going to space when all of that money could instead be spent in our own country here on Earth, reducing poverty or providing a higher quality of life for all people? That kind of thing. Sorts of things that you talk about in your social class. So, like, there's no real good, clear answer to a question like that. Do the potential gains of going to space outweigh all of the costs associated with it? Because it's not free to do. Like, these rocket ships and all of the research and development and all, like, everything that goes into these space missions is incredibly, incredibly expensive. And then even if we can find an economically ethical way to do it, should we be altering what is in space? Like, humans have this tendency to be like, oh, hey, we've got this nice planet, let's pollute it. Should we really be doing the same thing to planets that we don't even live on? Or does moving there make it okay because now we do live there? Like, these are the kinds of questions associated with the ethics of it. in terms of the economy, there's a lot that we could get. So maybe it is worth it for us to go, because then it's like we're paying a price now with our quality of life. And after we get all of these resources, then everyone's going to have a way better quality of life. Because there's, if space is limitless, then there's limitless resources. Why would we only use the resources that we can find on Earth? So if you have an asteroid that's 1,000 kilometers wide and has a bunch of iron, gold, and platinum in it, that asteroid could be worth a ton of money. But then the question also becomes, okay, if your supply of all of these things goes way up, does the cost then go down? And is that asteroid not actually worth that much money, because today's market values wouldn't hold true if we had such wide access to these things? So there's all kinds of questions you could ask with this, and we don't really have a good answer one way or the other. Super expensive to go to space, super expensive to get these resources. So even if markets weren't going to get messed up and it was actually going to be worth that much, we'd be losing money bringing it back. So what was the whole point of that? And so NASA doesn't really do as much as they used to. And it seems like people are more interested in spending money on Earth rather than spending tons of money going somewhere that we're really not getting that much out of anymore. So it's kind of like, yeah, we explored it, that was cool, but we know now that we're not going to make much of our money back on future exploration. So why are we still doing this? Is kind of the question that they're asking. There's also the issue of space junk. So we talked about how that 1/2 gram, sugar cube sized thing made that big hole in that chunk of metal because it was just moving so fast. Should we even be putting that stuff in space in the first place? Should we be cleaning it up after ourselves? If we pollute the environment, we try to clean up after ourselves. Why is space any different? So we've got a bunch of questions, no clear answers.